Welcome back. Now that we've worked with the main content, we're going to go ahead and talk about some accessibility topics. First up is tables. Tables can be very tricky to make accessible. Thanks to Dreamweaver, it's actually quite simple. So, with my index page open, I'm going to go ahead and find a place to create a new table. If I scroll down, I'm going to find this paragraph I created earlier, and I'll put a table after it. So I'm going to push the Enter key to create a new paragraph. Now I want to switch this paragraph to a table. To do that, I'm going to go to the Common tab of the Insert toolbar and find the Table button, which is right next to the Division button. You'll see the Table dialog box pop up. From here we can set everything we want to about our table. You'll see that we have several different header styles we can choose from, as well as the number of rows and columns, the table width, the border thickness, and cell padding and cell spacing. So before you create your table, you should know how many rows and columns you want to use. I'm going to go ahead and make a square table of 3 by 3, but I'm going to change the width. Instead of having a defined width of 200 pixels, I'm going to use a percentage amount and give it 100% of the division it's currently residing in. This way, the table will go from edge to edge on the division. Next is border thickness. This will be the thickness of the border around the outside edge of the table. I'm going to go ahead and leave it at 1 for now. Next is the cell padding and cell spacing. Cell padding is the space in between the content of a cell and that cell's border. Cell spacing is the space in between each border of each cell. I'm going to go ahead and leave these blank for now and set them later. The header is probably the most important option to choose from. Depending on how your header is set up, Dreamweaver will automatically create a scope attribute. And the scope attribute is the most important thing to make a table accessible. Without scope attributes, screen readers do not know which header cell is assigned to which data cell. So before you create your table, make sure to know how you want your headers aligned, either along the first column, the top row, or both the first column and top row. I'm going to go with both for my table. Next up are 2 more accessibility options. The first one is the caption. The caption is a short description of the table that will show up on the page for all users to see. I'm going to go ahead and just do an example caption of "this is the caption" so that you can see where it would show up on the page. When I say robots, I'm referring to pieces of software that crawl the web and find information about websites and compile them in one place, such as Google. In this case, however, adding a summary tag will help the screen reader describe the table verbally. If I type "this is the summary," you'll notice that this text never appears on the page. I'll go ahead and click OK. So you see our table appears all the way across the column. That was the 100%. You'll see here we have the caption, which shows up above the border. But you'll notice that it's very hard to see where exactly our cells are. Dreamweaver has a nice mode that allows you to see a little bit better when working with tables. I'll go ahead and click the View menu and scroll down to Table Mode, then choose Expanded Tables Mode. You'll notice now that we have some extra borders and some extra spacing inside of our table. Note that what this is not an actual rendering of what the table will look like when it appears on the page. This is just for you so that you can have an easier time navigating your table. You'll notice if I click inside the first cell that the text cursor appears in the middle of the cell. And that's because this is a header cell. You notice if I click in the middle cell, the cursor shows up on the left-hand side. You can tell if a cell is a data cell or a header cell by looking at the status bar. You'll see TD for table data, and TH for table header. You'll also notice if you type any text into the header cell that it's bold as opposed to a data cell. You'll also notice that Dreamweaver automatically resizes the columns based on the content residing within the table. This is representative of how the table will look once it's rendered for the column widths, but not for the spacing and padding. If I wanted to change any of the properties about a table, I can always right-click on the table to find the table context menu. You can split cells, merge cells that have already been split. You can insert new rows and columns, but note that if you do this, the scope attributes might be misinterpreted. So if you need to change the size of your table, I highly recommend creating a new table and copying and pasting the content from the old one to the new one. Let's take a look at the code so we can see where that summary went. I'm going to go ahead and click split mode. I'm going to give myself a little bit more room by dragging down on the separator bar. Now I'll scroll up to the top of the table. You'll see this is where our caption is, and you'll also see that the summary is right here inside the page. So for search engines and screen readers, the summary is easily accessible. For users, they would have to go into the code to find the summary. You'll also notice the scope attributes. So this is the most important part of making a table accessible. Because we used the header button on the table creation dialog box, the scope attributes were automatically applied. If we did not choose a header setting and set the headers manually, the scope attributes would not be here and our table would be less accessible. So always remember to choose the header that will work for you when you create the table in Dreamweaver.